This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Wednesday, and welcome to it, my friends. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Coming to you across the state from Marquette to Monroe and all points in between. Appreciate your input and your common sense. That's why we're here every day, working with you on your common sense and sharing with everybody. The phone number here, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. We're going to be on Mackinac Island come Friday for the Republican Leadership Conference. Shepler's will be getting us there, the official ferry of the Steve Gruber Show. Yeah, there's a joke in there somewhere, but let it be. Shepler's will be taking us back and forth to the Mackinac Island. Can't wait to see their new boat, Miss Margie. Made entirely in Michigan, for Michigan, by Michigan, and for the Steve Gruber Show. And a lot of folks will be up there. Scott Walker will be there. Jeb Bush will be there. Ted Cruz, John Kasich, Carly Fiorina. All of the folks that are getting ready to rumble for tonight's debate. And Donald Trump drawing a huge crowd again, this time in Los Angeles, California yesterday, talking about veterans affairs, the military. Says we have to build up our military and take care of our veterans. He said we treat illegal immigrants better than we treat our veterans. Did Donald Trump on the stump. And he's right. He keeps ringing the bell of what people are already thinking. You can think whatever you want about Donald Trump, but Trump is right about our military situation, about illegals being treated better than our veterans that have protected us in times of war. And he got a lot of applause for that. Meanwhile, Vice President Joe Biden is on the attack, attacking Donald Trump, calling his message denigrating. Denigrating. His comments about Carly Fiorina may have been denigrating and inappropriate, and they were. But the reason Donald Trump continues to move forward is that overall his message is resonating, not denigrating America. And that's the key. He keeps resonating with the people because the message that he is sending is one that people are willing and eager, it seems, eager to hear. The perfect metaphor, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump continuing his upward surge in polling, speaking against the background of the USS Iowa. That's where he stood yesterday in California. The World War II era battleship's massive cannons at his back, perhaps unintentionally pointed at the press with the spotlights trained squarely on him. Here's part of what he said. The veterans' hospitals, obviously, they have problems. They are not properly run. Make America Great hat on his head. He said, we're going to create a whole new system. We're going to take the system apart, and if they're not doing the job, the veterans are going to go to private doctors and private hospitals, and we'll pick up the tab, is basically what he said. Hundreds cheered. It was the farthest that Trump had gone so far. He said he will have a plan out in the next few weeks. He'll have a plan out in the next few weeks to discuss his plan for veterans. Nobody's going to mess with us, I can tell you that, is what he said. I mean, and again, this is why it's resonating. So let me ask you this. Trump is now north of 30%. when I've asked this question before, I've gotten mixed results. But as we head into debate number 2 tonight on CNN at the Ronald Reagan Library in California, have you changed your mind about Donald Trump? Would you vote for him? Are you one of the 30% or 40% that now supports Donald Trump? 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966 is the number to call. I'm curious. Are you a Ben Carson supporter? A Carly Fiorina supporter? Who are you with today? Who are you with today? Yeah, and Joe Biden stepping up his attacks, as I mentioned here, setting aim at Donald Trump. In fact, we've got a little taste of Joe Biden here, the vice president. Go with that, Alex.
I don't want anybody to be down right now about what's going on in the Republican Party. I mean this sincerely now. This is not, no, I'm being deadly earnest about this. I want you to remember, notwithstanding the fact that there's one guy absolutely denigrating an entire group of people, appealing to the baser side of human nature, working on this notion of xenophobia in a way that hasn't occurred in a long time. This will pass. The Trump and that stuff you're hearing on the other team, and not just the other, this isn't about Democrat, Republican. It's about a sick message. This message has been tried on America many times before. We always, 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 always overcome it.
So I guess the message of white people are the problem and police are the problem, that message is okay from the Democrats. But when you say we need to secure the border and control immigration and become a nation of laws again, that's xenophobic, apparently. You see, because I don't get that. I get that as national security and common sense. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think securing our border is paramount to saving the nation. There's no middle ground here. It's paramount to saving the nation. For Joe Biden to go out there and say, well, he's xenophobic. Really? From the most paralyzing identity politics administration in the history of the nation that wants to divide people over and over and over, he's going to give a lecture about xenophobia. All right. To the hotline. David on the line in Grand Rapids. David, welcome to the program.
Good morning. I am not a Trump supporter at all. I am a conservative. I am a Tea Party guy, I guess. It doesn't matter. But I'm not a supporter, and I don't think you could get me to vote for him. Probably no matter what. I'd probably rather not vote than vote for anybody.
Well, not voting, David, that's the kind of mentality that gave us a second term of Barack Obama, just so you know.
Oh, I agree.
So I guess if you want to see Hillary Clinton in the White House, that would be a good attitude to take. On the other hand, you might want to take a different tack, David, and vote for the Republican nominee, even if it is Donald Trump. Unless you want a third term of Barack Obama. You choose. It's Wednesday here on the Steve Gruber Show. The hotline, 888-900-9966. Phone calls welcome. Let's do it.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
I was justified when I was 5, raising Cain, I spit in your eye. Times are changing now, the forget fast.
I wish I'd had a little bit more time there with the last caller, because I would have to say, why not? Well, you don't like his hair? He's too obnoxious. He's too blunt. He's too rude. Why would you not support Donald Trump at this point? You'd rather have Joe Biden as president or Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders? Come on. Let me explain something. Here's a YouGov survey that came out yesterday, published yesterday. Half of Americans would report an employer they suspected of hiring illegal immigrants to the government. Half Americans would support the government actively searching for illegal aliens here who have not committed any other crime to make sure they got deported. 39% of respondents would report their neighbors for being illegal immigrants. YouGov asked 1,000 Americans between September 1st and 2nd for their opinions on various issues related to illegal immigration. How serious is a problem is illegal immigration in the U.S.? 51% of respondents replied very serious. 26% responded illegal immigration is somewhat serious, and 15% described it as a problem. So in total, that's 92% of Americans believe that immigration is a problem, from very serious to somewhat serious. 92% of Americans consider illegal immigration a problem. Was Donald Trump wrong when he said that illegals get treated better than our own veterans? No, he wasn't. And I myself am not a Donald Trump supporter per se, but I'm saying, why not? Do you have a better alternative? I mean, if he gets the nomination, fair enough. I hear you shouting names, but do you have a better alternative if he gets the nomination? What I want to hear from this morning as well are a couple of Donald Trump fans. I want to hear somebody out there that says, this is who I'm voting for, and here's why. A majority of respondents to this YouGov poll would also create a phone number where people could report activity connected to illegal immigration to the government. 55% said they'd support creating a phone number where people could report activity connected to illegal immigration to the government. 13% they would definitely not do that. The point being is, Trump has a winning message here because he found a winning issue. And he's out front on this winning issue. Now, he can still self-destruct and, do stupid things like insult Carly Fiorina the way she looks, which is, it's just Bush League. Come on, raise your game a little bit, would you? But if you want another term of Barack Obama, then don't vote for Trump if he becomes a Republican nominee. And you can continue to build Obama's America, which includes the United States falling behind Chile and Jordan in economic freedom in the latest rankings. Yeah, we've fallen again, thanks to the erosion of the rule of law and an onslaught of regulations. The Fraser Institute places the United States now as the 16th freest economy in the world. The economy that built the world because of free markets and the ability of the individual to create something new and different has now fallen to the 16th position. Frederick Manchair in the Economic Freedom with the Fraser Institute attributed the collapse in the rankings to the weakened rule of law, the so-called wars on terrorism and drugs, and a confused regulatory environment have helped to erode economic freedom in the United States, which has now fallen behind more economically free countries such as Qatar, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates, for God's sake. Once seen as a beacon of economic liberty, America now fallen behind many European nations, including the UK, Ireland, and Switzerland. Hong Kong, number one. Hong Kong, number one. And if you want to continue, again, if you want to continue with Obama's America, then you'd like to continue this discussion on raising the minimum wage to places it's never been before. In Berkeley, California, now they're discussing raising the minimum wage to $19 an hour. 19. I mean, why don't we just make it 50? Why don't we just make it $50 an hour? That way, everybody can make $100,000 a year, no problem. Currently, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, but many states, cities, and counties have gone well above it. Several cities on track toward reaching a $15 minimum wage, but nowhere in the country has gone any higher. This proposal in California recommends raising the minimum wage to $19 an hour by 2020. So let me ask you something. Do you want another term of Barack Obama? Because if the minimum wage is $19 an hour, 3 times what it was when he was elected, what does that say about your buying power? What does that say about what you're earning? What does it say about inflation, something you never hear about? Because they never talk about inflation. And you have to ask yourself why. Why is it they never talk about inflation? Why is it they never tell you what the cost for the average family is for milk, bacon, bread, whatever, the things that people buy on a regular basis? Now, gasoline's cheap, but it has absolutely nothing to do with this president. It has to do with fracking and an American energy revolution and renaissance. You know that, and so do I. It's the Steve Gruber Show on a Wednesday. We'll be back in class right after the break.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
.33 after on this Wednesday. And for firefighters from around the nation, well, around the continent, really, Canada, United States, and of course Michigan and lower Michigan, likely to attend today's funeral for firefighter Dennis Rodman at Michigan State University's Breslin Center. Rodman, of course, run over last week intentionally by a guy who apparently was upset the traffic wasn't moving fast enough. Yeah. So heavy traffic expected from noon until 2 in downtown Lansing as these firefighters come in from, well, all over. That's why they're using the Breslin Center. We want to leave the family in awe because of all the memories, said Lansing firefighter Steve Babcock. Rodman was out there collecting money for charity, for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. The Lansing Fire Department didn't have an expected attendance figure for the funeral at Breslin, which holds 15,000 people. Out-of-town firefighters are being directed to Lansing area hotels and motels, said Babcock. Firefighters from around Michigan as well as Chicago, Indianapolis, New York City, Philadelphia, Canada, and elsewhere expected to attend. Those from surrounding departments will cover shifts for the Lansing crew during the funeral. The roster of those departments not immediately available, but let's be honest. It's a family, not to mention that Rodman was also a United States Marine and a veteran who served in Iraq. There'll be military funerals at his honor. He is the first Lansing firefighter to die in the line of duty in 45 years since 1970. And why? Because we have a mentally ill person on the streets who thought that traffic wasn't going fast enough. Really. It's time to rebuild the mental health system in this country that was torn down in the 1950s by the American Civil Liberties Union. Thank you. Thank you to the left for tearing down the mental health facilities of America because we don't want to label anybody. We don't know. We don't want to offend anybody. Load of garbage. You know, you ask why our prisons are so full and why we have mass shootings like we do on occasion and we have incidents like happened to Dennis Rodman. Well, gee, if we had a stronger mental health system in this nation, maybe we wouldn't have to deal with these sorts of tragedies nearly as often. But instead of treating people, we just lock them up in cages, and we don't do anything to better their situation. With as many people we have, yes, there's mental illness in America. Go figure. And there has to be a better way to deal with it. So again, I just want to thank the American Civil Liberties Union for being at the forefront of tearing down mental institutions, for tearing down the hospitals that actually helped people, for tearing down what worked. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, ACLU. Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard demanding Amazon end sales of T-shirts with the slogan, blank the police. Also demanding that Facebook shut down pages by the same name, pages that call for violence against police. Social media has become the main source of propaganda for anti-law enforcement movements, and it is disgusting that Facebook continues to permit F the police pages and groups for public consumption, Bouchard wrote in a statement issued yesterday. He issued the statement from the Major County Sheriff's Association, a national organization comprised of elected sheriffs of jurisdictions with more than 500,000 residents, indicating he is not alone in the demands. Bouchard is listed as the organization's Vice President of Governmental Affairs. The association condemns the obscene caricatures depicting the assassination of law enforcement officials and calls upon Facebook to immediately remove the content, Bouchard wrote. Additionally, it was recently brought to the Major County Sheriff's Association attention that Amazon was selling F the Police T-shirts as well as other anti-police merchandise, but by God, don't sell a Confederate flag. By God, post a Confederate flag on Facebook and get turned in for hate speech. Really, Amazon? Really? And I like you. It is unimaginable that a retailer would promote and profit off the bigoted targeting of an individual based on their race, religion, disability, or sexual preference. It's also unimaginable that a retailer would promote and profit off the targeting for violence of police officers. Bouchard did post an update that Amazon had removed some of the items in question, but Facebook has ignored repeated inquiries. Facebook user John Tarnowski said, so much for free speech. Valid argument. But at some point, Facebook that takes down people with pictures of deer they've killed or bears they've killed or Cecil the lion, for God's sake, because it might offend someone, is going to stand on the free speech pedestal when it comes to killing police officers? Come on, Facebook, bit of a double standard there, don't you think? A little bit disingenuous, don't you think? Don't let some girl have a picture of the impala she killed in Africa, because that's offensive. But by God, say, F the police, kill the police, oink, oink, shoot, shoot. It's all good with you, right, Facebook? Bunch of garbage. People are free to say what they like, but we are also free to buy and not buy and encourage others to not buy what's offensive. The sheriff said we defend free speech, even disgusting, offensive speech, but we don't have to help them profit from it. There are two Facebook pages, one that lists itself as a company with more than 127,000 likes, the other a community with 13,300 members using the F the Police moniker. A recent post of the community page featured a photo of a police car engulfed in flames with the statement, "No problem. I like my bacon crispy." Now, if you did something similar with an ethnic group, it wouldn't be up there for 10 seconds, nor should it be. I believe in free speech more than most. But there also is some common sense to be applied, and crossing the line needs to be examined. A song named F the Police was made popular when released by rap group NWA on their Straight Outta Compton album back in 1988. Detroit police pulled the plug on the rap group when they started into the song during a 1989 performance at Joe Louis Arena. Just, push one way, push the other, push one way, push the other. It is Wednesday on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
Welcome back to it. It's Wednesday on the Steve Gruber Show. Again, the hotline, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. This part of the program brought to you by Mesa, good business, good health, and great schools. It's America's fault. That's my takeaway. The refugee problem around the world, whether it's illegals clamoring at our southern border or Syrians rushing into Europe and demanding that they have a place to stay. It's America's fault. Well, that's my takeaway from what Pope Francis had to say, that the refugee crisis is being caused by bad, unjust socioeconomic systems that worship the god of money. Global warming is our fault, too. Pat Wood is the author of Technocracy Rising, the Trojan horse of global transformation. Patrick, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you here. All right. So this Pope particularly, has said some, I don't know, is it safe to say some things that are a little bit out of left field from time to time, but this one's out there too?
Well, left field is probably where Karl Marx lives.
I would say.
This Pope is very, very much a Marxist. And his policies today are playing right into the hands of the United Nations in particular to implement sustainable development and Agenda 21 all around the world.
And so when you say that, and we've had you explain this before, but just in 20 seconds or so, explain Agenda 21 and why people should be concerned.
Well, Agenda 21 is the conference, United Nations conference back in 1992 that actually created and popularized the term sustainable development. That's an economic term, not a political term. But the United Nations is intent on establishing this resource-based economy on the whole world. They intend to displace capitalism and free enterprise altogether. And actually, some of the head mucky mucks at the United Nations have said exactly that in public, that capitalism and free enterprise is on the chopping block, and they have a timeline to do it.
And what is that timeline?
Well, this upcoming meeting on September 25 is an important milestone, because at this meeting, this is the meeting where the Pope is actually speaking in person. This meeting will present a new document called 2030 Agenda to all of the leaders of the world. And they're expected to sign this document, commit to it, and what it calls for is complete implementation of the Sustainable Development Economic System by 2030. That's only 15 years away. It will radically transform the world and how the world does business. There's not a lot of material, actually analytical material and writing of what this would mean to us, but this is one of the reasons that I'm jumping up and down and I'm writing about it. And here we are.
Well, I don't think that, they may call for a 2030 agenda, and they may nudge us down the line of Agenda 21, and they may get there someday. They won't get there in 15 years. Too many people making too much money. The Chinese, for example. The Russians, for example, the Germans are not going to climb on board and say, you know what, let's just all scrap it for Marxism. Isn't going to happen. It's just not going to happen, Pat.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I don't make a lot of comment about their intent and their ability. Well, they have ability to pull it off, but there's never been a timeline the United Nations created that worked out perfectly. That's for sure. Everybody says, oh, we'll do it by next Tuesday. And, yeah, right, 3 months from now, it's still not done. But over the years, they have had a huge influence on the way the world is conducting business. And a resource-based economy essentially is going to mean that your choices on what you consume, where you go, and, what your carbon footprint is, these things will be determined by other people. Not you. The American way is we have a free choice to do what we want to do, as long as it's legal, of course, doesn't harm other people. But the United Nations has plans with this Agenda 21 program where they will tell people what they're allowed to consume, where they're allowed to live, that sort of thing. And this is why I know at least many people that just read it on a casual basis are very concerned. It's like, well, wait a minute. You can't tell me what I should consume and how much, et cetera, et cetera.
And in fact, it's happening now. And in fact, parts of this are not far-fetched, like I said. But the elimination of capitalism overall, no. But right now, the Department of Housing and Urban Development is already making steps to change the diversity of neighborhoods, because neighborhoods have to have a different socio-economic makeup and a different makeup of different groups and ethnicities. You know this, and so they are dictating where you can live and what school you can go to. And there's already guidelines on your food and so forth, so it's not a leap. They already tell us what toilet we can flush and what light bulb we can use, how much fat we can consume, whether or not we can have a sugary drink in the city of New York. Don't worry, this Marxist mentality is not too far away. I'll give you that, Pat.
Well, the United Nations has been on it, that's for sure, and the Pope also is coming to support the implementation of sustainable development. He will be quite pointedly bashing capitalism and free enterprise during his trip. He's going to address the joint session of Congress. This is the first Pope in history has ever done that, at least in our history, and he's going to be speaking at other places as well, but his main mission, as he comes to the United States, is to speak to this 2030 Agenda meeting on the 25th. And he very pointedly, they've already released his talking points. He will be talking about the quote-unquote evils of capitalism and free enterprise.
So maybe he should talk about the evils of Marxism and tyranny.
Well, yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Free thought.
I will say that I'm not Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I'm not Catholic now, but I have a lot of friends who are Catholic, and I do believe that there's a growing revolution within the Catholic Church right now over what this Pope is doing, saying.
Guess we'll find out. All right, Patrick Wood, author, Technocracy Rising. Thank you, sir.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
I'm confused a little bit these days by the foaming dissent of those on the political right when it comes to presidential candidates and their nearly impossible set of standards to measure if each one is conservative enough. Those on the right lament this candidate's too liberal on that and that one's too soft on that. If you dare voice support for someone in the GOP field, you are heading into dangerous water, especially for those who demand strict adherence to a conservative code that allows very little wiggle room. Unless you think Ted Cruz is the answer, which so far I remain very skeptical and unconvinced of this notion, you are yourself labeled as too far left. I know because it's been happening to me. And then you start to have this conversation about what's going on, and inevitably, somebody drops the name of the savior into the middle of the infield. His name, of course, is Ronald Wilson Reagan. And they start citing Reagan as well. When Reagan did this, Reagan did that. Let me tell you something, boys and girls. If Ronald Reagan were running today, he probably wouldn't make it past the first primary. Why? Because he's too liberal. Yes, he's too liberal. Let me give you an idea. On guns, Ronald Reagan signed into law in California a background check bill. He limited somebody's ability to buy a gun. He also supported the Brady gun control measure in 1991. Yeah, that's the same Ronald Reagan. When president, he traded arms for hostages. He negotiated with rogue nations. He did it, the nation of Iran. Yeah, that Iran. But why was Ronald Reagan the greatest president of my lifetime? Because he did great things. First of all, he wasn't Jimmy Carter, thank God. Second, he created a roadmap to beat the Russians and destroy the Soviet Union and the Cold War. He reduced taxes time and again and created the Economic Recovery Tax Act of 1981 and saw domestic investment rise 77%. Economic growth averaged 4.6% on the plus side every year. And he doubled the amount of money we brought into our tax coffers. You see, it's about balance. Ronald Reagan had balance. He wasn't a hardcore conservative. He was a pragmatist. But sadly, by today's standards, Reagan wouldn't even get through the first primary, I don't believe. You see, on guns and terror and other issues would have been the end of it for him. The moral of the story is simply this. There is not a perfect candidate. You need to find a candidate that aligns close enough and then hope for the best. I'm Steve Gruber. These are Bullet Points. We'll be right back.